Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a movie review for you. I was told that all good movies I watch are extremely bad movies I'm supposed to do a review on, so that's what I'm going to do, right? People want to hear my thoughts on some movies. I love movies. It's a big part of my life. I watched recently The Virgin Witch, as you've seen in the thumbnail, from 1972, a classic horror movie, if you if you could say that. And the reason I say that is the horror part of it, but I'll get there. Let's get into the who's and what's, right? So, The Virgin Witch was written by Klaus Vogel, directed by Ray Austin. The cast of characters, and it's not a big cast of characters, but it does feature, for that time, it was introducing two sisters, Vicci Michelle and Anne Michelle, and they do play the main characters in the movie. And then you have like Patricia Haines is another main character. You have Keith Bradley, Neil Hallett, and James Chase is pretty much the main cast of characters. With the who's and what's out of the way, there is an extreme warning that goes with this movie. It is heavily predominant on the nudity side. Now, with that being said, it is not done in an unfashionable way. It doesn't, draw away from the movie or anything. But especially if you are a married man and you happen to go watch this with your significant other, there is a lot of women nudity in this movie. So to just be on the well-advised part of that. That's kind of why I couldn't show you a trailer, because even the trailer is heavily, endowed with the booby shot here and there. And I will say that it predominantly features the woman side of the nudity part. There's not a lot of male nudity. You might get a butt shot or something like that. So with that out of the way, let's get into the plot of the story. The whole main idea behind the whole story is kind of like irony, and because it's basically about these two sisters, and Christine, and the other girl is Betty, and I'm bad with names. So Christine and Betty, that somewhere in London, probably Manchester or London, I don't know, somewhere in England, but the main character, Christine, is kind of like looking for a job or whatever, and she happens to pass like a fashion, she happens to pass a magazine rack, and they have a fashion magazine on there, and as she passes it, the magazine literally starts speaking to her, and not in a comical way. It's kind of like a telepathic type of thing, but it's the first form of magic and witchcraft that you get in the movie. She is later led to a fashion agency where she does apply to be a model, and she's looked over by, our other main character of the movie, which would be Sybil. Sybil is the fashion agent, and she basically measures her, looks at Betty, Christina and everything, and evaluates her and stuff like that. From the get-go, the movie shows you that it's all like a trap. But as the story goes, and it kind of sets it up as a sinister trap, but as the movie goes, it's not really in that form. You do find out that the movie, of course, with the naming Virgin Witch, that the movie is about witchcraft and covenant, a covenant. But about 50% into the movie, you do find out that this witch covenant is actually kind of like a good covenant. They pretty much predominantly use their magic or witchcraft to recruit other members, and the only reason they recruit other members is to kind of use them in the fashion world, basically stating that this covenant has kind of put a spell on the whole world. So anything tied to movies, TV, that kind of stuff, it all has some weird play with magic at the beginning of it. They put a spell on us, and that's why we're attracted to these stars or the kind of thing. So what they do, specifically Sybil, she recruits these women, converts them into the cult, the witch cult, and then basically turns them into fashion models and sends them out in the world, and they basically make money for the covenant. On and I don't think there's ever a name that they give the covenant, right? But the covenant is, in all forms in the movie that they show us, is kind of like a happy-go-lucky type of witch colony. They're not, it's none of that black magic or anything. So, in her meeting Sybil and doing the whole interview and stuff, she is tricked into going to a retreat that happens the next day, and it's going to happen for the whole weekend. I think it's a 4-day trip. and she is taken to a place called Witch World. It's not spelled that way, but that's how it sounds, Witch World. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I would have heard that name going to a compound like Witch World, like, you know, I mean, it kind of would have raised some red flags, right? And I think it's actually spelled or pronounced like Witchworm, and it sounded Witch World. But she does end up going to the retreat, and she brings her sister along. She doesn't want to leave her sister in the city alone. Her and the two sisters have kind of been like both messing around with the same guy, which is Peter. And Christine, that takes a job, she kind of wants to get, you know, her sister away from Peter. So they do both go to the compound that's, you know, out in the kind of like more rural area of England. It's kind of like out and isolated, that kind of thing. And once you get there, it's very pretty. I mean, the whole landscape and everything. Even it kind of looks like a castle in my opinion, like a smaller version of a castle. But they do get there and they meet the rest of the, you know, kind of a cast, and you meet kind of like it's the person that owns the compound, but he's a doctor. But they never really state what he's a doctor in, but he does talk about what he has studied, and it's basically witchcraft, and both sides, the good and the bad, and, you know, and he kind of focuses on the good side of witchcraft, and that's what the Covenant is all based about. About 50, you know, once you get a lot of this information about the witchcraft and stuff, a lot of it, you know, the main layout of it lays out very nicely and easy to follow. But basically, he does mention that you know, he is aware of black magic. He has studied, you know, a little bit of it, and, you know, he just didn't focus on that kind of thing. So as the story progresses, you know, the two sisters get to the compound. They are, you know, kind of left to their own, you know, desires and stuff like that when they get there, to look around, go eat, that kind of stuff. And like the next day, basically, you know, Sybil puts Christina to work, starting doing photo shoots and stuff like that. You know, as the photo shoot starts happening, she's tasked with the photographer. They go out and, of course, compound acres, and they've got a lot of wooden areas and that kind of stuff. So the photographer does take out, you know, Christine, and he kind of reveals a little more than he probably shouldn't have, but he kind of starts worrying about Christine, and he starts talking about Sybil, how she gets jealous, how he has been warned to keep her a virgin, that kind of thing, that if she gets messed with before the ceremony, that it could alter, you know, things and this and that. We do find out shortly that Christine isn't bothered by men at all, and that's kind of why she is like on board for the Covenant, because when she finds out, it's not like this, oh, there's witches. No, she's kind of like all on board from the get-go. It kind of goes back to the beginning of the movie, but you kind of get this feeling that she already had, you know, some powers to begin with. That's why the magazine spoke to her and not her sister, kind of thing. We do see that, you know, eventually they do the photo shoot and everything with Reggie and or Peter or whatever his name is. I'm bad with names, but basically Christine and the photographer, they end up like going on their own way back to the compound and stuff after the photo shoot's done, and you do see a lot of these, you know, jealousy side from Sybil. Eventually they finally do get to the ceremony, which I think happens the next day, and they basically induct Christine into the witching world and the Covenant. You know, the ceremony is basic. There's no like blood or anything. Actually, in this movie, I don't think there's a drop of blood in it. And the ceremony is just basically like them dancing around, saying some nice things. You know, kind of like, you know, I think the high priestess, which at the time is the doctor who owns the compound, you know, I think he gives her a kiss on the cheek or something like that to signify her, you know, I don't know, that's a little weird. But the ceremony takes place and Christine becomes, you know, a witch or whatever, and she starts getting more invested into the witchcraft, wanting to know more about it, what they can do, what the Covenant is about, type of thing. And instantly you just see a different side of Christine, and that's what the rest of the movie is about. That's the irony part about it, because really it's kind of like, you know, be careful who you bring into your secret society type thing, because the whole rest of the movie is kind of like Christina taking over the witchcraft type of thing. Now, that's kind of where I'm going to leave it off, because if I talk any more about it, it kind of spoils the whole ending. Um, Overall, what I thought about this movie, I generally liked it. I thought it was a great watch. I didn't think I would like it from the first couple minutes. But actually, as you get more involved in the movie, it's actually an easy story to follow, and it was actually very interesting seeing the like good witch perspective of it. You know, especially being in a horror movie, that in horror they tend to focus on nothing but the evil. So it's kind of different for them to start out with the good side of things. It was a different take for me. Um, Now, of course, that this isn't a movie that has the greatest acting and greatest photography, cinematography, nothing like that. It's actually a pleasant movie to watch. The cinematography is done well. The actual like witchcraft that they try and show you, and usually, like I said, it's usually like telekinetic. It's done in the right ways where you can, right off the bat, you're like, oh, okay, they're doing spells kind of thing. It's not something where you gotta, leave up to your imagination kind of thing. Um, the one bad thing I can say about this movie is it's not really a horror movie. In my opinion, there's not anything that's scary in this movie or terrifying or, really suspenseful. If anything, it's just a good story, and kind of the irony part is is what made me do the review on it. Once it gets to that part of the story, it was really amazing and riveting, because especially how the story starts out, you really don't see it go in that fashion. And it's something that's hard to predict without me telling you beforehand, kind of thing. I never would have guessed that that's how the movie would have gone in the beginning. It's really hard to tell where the movie's going to go in the beginning because of how it's set up and the basic elements of the plot, right? A girl taking a fashion. Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the ordinary. I mean, do I recommend this movie? Yes, I do recommend this movie. It was a great watch. I mean, there's not a lot of effects. There's not a lot of, things to drag it down as far as what the movie offers. So I kind of like that. This movie is free to watch. It's on YouTube, and I will link it in the description down below if you care to, take upon the journey that is the Virgin Witch. But I do highly recommend it. It was a good watch. It was easy to watch. It's only an hour and 28 minutes. It wasn't a long watch. And it's kind of one of those things where it's one of those movies where you don't extremely have to pay attention to. There's a lot of scenes that there's no dialogue at all, and it's just them walking and kind of looking at stuff, that kind of thing. But that is my review on the Virgin Witch. I will try and, put as much as I can in the description. If you've ever seen this, let me know in the comments. If you go and watch this after you see this review, let me know what you think about it. And I want to hear the good and the bad. I have a very different level of like, what are good and bad, and I have like a, I love bad movies if they're done the right way, right? That term campy has become a name state. So, there's it's very hard, in my opinion, to get to that bad level movie, right? But this was definitely, I would say, it's not the best movie I've ever seen. It's not the greatest movie I've ever seen. I'd put it right there in that half column, and especially since we're in October and this is the month of the witch, right? I would definitely say check it out. But with all that being said, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see y'all later. Blah.